In our last video, we sailed from Staniel Cay, Bahamas to Andros and then to the banks of Bahamas, where we anchored for the night under a full moon. The next morning, we sailed past Cat Cay and Bimini and on to Fort Lauderdale to Port Everglades. While sailing past Bimini, the Bahamas police was announcing on VHF 16 that the country was closed and that no one was allowed to enter or to exit. Therefore, we weren't allowed to stop in Bimini and we had to proceed straight to Fort Lauderdale, where we crossed into Port Everglades past the opening bridge. In this episode, we leave Fort Lauderdale for West Palm, where we wait out a weather window to go north, and Pierre ponders many questions about the generator. Beautiful sails in West Palm. Today's April 15th and we're in West Palm. Actually, we're near Singer Island, just north of Palm Beach in a marina, and we're just waiting for weather to blow through. So there are tons of storms, and we wanted to go to Boston in just one leg, 4 days overnight. Looks like it may not happen, but we're hoping for a weather window on Friday. Today's Wednesday. The bad weather is just starting to come in. We're going to have thunderstorms all night and all day tomorrow, and then we'll be off. And if bad weather hits, well, we'll try to nip in maybe at Beaufort, North Carolina. And we do use weather routers when the weather patterns are challenging, and so we will be in good hands. Pierre's working on the generator again, so maybe you can explain.
Hello from West Palm, finishing beer that we bought in Martinique. This one is 50 centiliters, a little bit larger than typical American beer. And a bottle of wine would be 75. So anyway, back to serious things. I think we've mentioned in the past that we've had some little issues with the generator, very minor, about the fact that we had to put a one-way valve below the water line to keep the water in the pipe, even if the hull was getting airborne once in a while. And that didn't solve all the issues because the generator is quite high, almost 6-7 feet above the water. And the manual from Fisher Panda says that generator should be installed very close to the waterline level. So it's creating a lot of strain on that impeller. And the blades are flexing back and forth, as you know, the one that pulls the seawater to the heat exchanger in the engine. And it creates a lot of wear and tear on that little impeller, and they just give up.
Here we are discussing the generator when we were at anchor in the Bahamas. So we're in Long Island. Coronavirus is going on. We just found out on the net today that cruisers are allowed to go to shore to get groceries.
As long as we have a copy of our cruising permit.
So Pierre's going to explain some of the boat projects, the one on the generator.
Well, the generator issue has been ongoing since we purchased the boat, more or less. And it's hard to blame the manufacturer 100% on an issue like this because this is one of the options that we selected. The issue we're having is the boat is fairly high, high above the water line, the water. So the generator being installed beside the mast here on the right side in front of the nav station probably gives us a couple of meters of lift from the water level up to the generator. And we don't have one of those boost pump on the water to bring it up to close to the level of generator. It's a little bit technical. You don't want to pressure the water too much because, of course, when the generator is not running, or if it stops running, that water would overfill the generator and could possibly go into the exhaust valves and create other issues to the exhaust, wet exhaust that they have. We were assured by the manufacturer that the generator was able to lift the water up the 2 meters to feed the water flow into the generator. And I'm not sure about that. Maybe it works once in a while, but since we purchased the engines, we've had to change impeller almost once a month, simply because the blades are breaking apart. And at one point, it's almost in our schedule now. Every time we start a generator, we have to go down in the hall, make sure the water is flowing. If not, start the generator right away before everything destroys.
And the other problem is that we purchased spare impellers, but we only have one left.
Yeah. As soon as you start to go in big waves, part of that hull becomes airborne and the water would drain down. And to avoid that issue, we installed a one-way valve in the toilet and in the generator feed system. But I installed one-way valve for houses, which are pretty high restriction, meaning you have to blow in pretty hard for the valve to open. So they're very good. In a house with 60 psi, you don't care. On a boat where, especially in a suction side of the generator or in a toilet where you're dealing with much lower type of pressure or suction, it is more of an issue. So one little project today that I will do, try to help a bit that issue about the lifting, is I will remove the city type of one-way valve, which is spring-loaded and pretty hard, very rugged but pretty hard to open, and I'll change it for this one here, which is a marine type one-way valve, which is very, very low friction. So when you test it, you just blow in it, you see there's almost no restriction at all. So this will make the lifting process a little bit easier, and hopefully we won't have to change impellers once a month. Hopefully we'll be able to do 2 months. And we'll try that and see how it happens. But if not, we'll have to go back and really investigate with the manufacturer how we can help boost the water level up so that we don't have these issues with the generator impeller. When I removed this valve here, the middle one, the high pressure one, I found that there was a bit of water leaking to the bottom, meaning that the one-way seal was not perfect. And if I look inside here, I see a small straw, and there are no pre-filters here between the water coming in from the sea to this. So we have a small piece of grass here, which kept the valve from closing perfectly and doing a good seal. And because of that, we were probably draining the generator hose every day, every time we use a generator. So the generator would have to restart with an empty pipe. The only way we notice when the impeller is going is that one of the blades breaks. And once we open the pump to change the impeller, that blade is gone. And they tend to accumulate in the heat exchanger because that's the first place where there is a restriction in the engine, in the water flow. So it was on my list of things to do, and just have a look at it. And for the last few days, I started getting a cylinder head temperature now instead of the typical exhaust temperature, which is a low water flow. And so that intrigued me. So I went back to the engine apart, and I noticed that, the cooling system, part of the cooling system apart, to get rid of those bits of impellers that were stuck in the heat exchanger. And I noticed that the glycol level was very low in the engine. So I went into the Fisher panel manual, and they said that the expansion tank for the cooling system should be located about 200 centimeters above the top end of the engine, which in this case not possible because the ceiling in the compartment where the generator is just not high enough. So what happened is that we just didn't have any glycol in the top end of the engine, which created that high cylinder head temperature. So that's easy enough to fix again, but tried it yesterday, refilled it all up and raised the tank up a bit as much as I could, and then run the generator at full power for about an hour, and absolutely no issues. Everything is back to normal.
Cheers, mon amour. And you even taught me how to do the impeller, although I don't like getting my hands dirty. Just in case.
Of course.
So?
Well, it's done. I just closed it up, so you missed it by a few minutes, a couple of minutes. But these are the pieces of the impeller that I was able to extract from the heat exchangers. I had 3 or 4 of those, the black thing there. Some people might say it's not normal that always working on a boat like this. And in our experience after 18 some boat is that it doesn't matter whether you buy a U boat or a whole used boat, it always takes a year to 2 to get everything up to the way you want. Most of us, have special requirements that we want. For example, this little generator here is not standard for Fisher Panda. It's part of the options. And so when you go ahead and you say, well, I want, this type of model of generator, they have to go to what they call in France bureau d'études, a small engineering group of guys that look at the design and say, well, can we fit it in? Does it? And then once they've done that, then they will write installation memo for the team in the yard that's actually doing the installation. So getting these small errors, especially when it's an option like this, that gets them a little bit away from their routine of building the standard boat, always raises a few eyebrows, and things like this do happen, and it's absolutely normal. So I certainly wouldn't blame one or the other. We've dealt with a lot of different manufacturers in our lives, both very large volume and very small volume, and these issues always come up. So it's quite normal, and if you like to tinker with things, then it's great. It's fun. You get to learn your boat. So next time we have something like this happen to us in the middle of the Pacific, we'll know how to fix it, which is the goal. But if not, you can always, find either another sailor around that has gone through the process we did, or there'll be some repairman or a shop around that will be happy to help you guys.
And look at I see an extra piece of dog grass. Could you get that out for me, please?
In our case, we decided to purchase one of the little Fisher Panda variable speed generators, which more or less runs at much lower RPM, which is one of the issues that the high-speed 60 hertz generators of the world have always been plagued with, which is the high RPM that you have to maintain to get the 60 hertz frequency. Now this one, the frequency and the voltage is set by an external inverter. So all the generator is, more or less, is just a little permanent magnet motor being turned by the generator itself that generates a high frequency, high voltage that is fed into the inverter, and the inverter provides what the boat needs. So that allows the generator to more or less have what they call variable speed and be a lot more efficient, and also be lower RPM and still being very light.